2017 was by far the most exciting year of my life. At the beginning of the year, I found out I was going to be a mom, and I could not have been more thrilled. I got really lucky in that I had a pretty easy pregnancy. In fact, I think some of my friends and family members who had been pregnant before were secretly mad at me because I didn't get morning sickness, not even once. So when I went to the hospital to give birth to my daughter, I naively thought, well, this is just going to be complete smooth sailing. However, I quickly learned how wrong I was. I ended up having an emergency C-section surrounded by what felt like more than 20 doctors. My daughter came out completely blue. She wasn't crying, and the amount of time that it took them to get her to breathe felt like an eternity. As soon as she came out, they immediately whisked her off to the neonatal intensive care unit, and I wasn't even able to see her until the next day. That time away from her felt like someone had ripped my heart out of my chest. I was in physical pain because I was recovering from the surgery, but it couldn't match the emotional pain that I felt of being away from my child and the worry of not knowing what was happening to her and not knowing how she was doing. Thankfully, this story does have a happy ending, and thanks to the many doctors and nurses who took care of her, everything turned out okay. She's now a very happy and active kindergartner. She loves gymnastics and painting. She loves roller skating and technology, teaching me all the things that I didn't know my cell phone could do. As you can imagine, though, this was a very defining moment in my life. And so after this happened, after I got back from the hospital, I had a lot of time to sit and to think and to process everything that happened. I started thinking a lot about friends and family members who had been through similar situations with their children, and I suddenly understood the fear and the pain of not knowing what's going on with your child, because I felt it at this level I hadn't before, because I had been through it too. One of the other ways that I tried to process this was I went online. So I joined parenting Facebook groups, and I read every article about others who had traumatic births that I could get my hands on. And I would go down all these rabbit holes of all these different things that can happen to babies during childbirth and during the first year of their life. And it was overwhelming, but I couldn't stop myself. I would just spend hours just scrolling, going through, down all these rabbit holes of different things that happened to mothers and babies. And one of the rabbit holes that I went down that was dark and difficult was not just what happens with human babies, but what happens with animal babies at the hands of humans. We all learn things in the world, but we don't necessarily feel them. That's what happened to me with animals. I knew a lot about them. I knew a lot about the cruelties that they face, some of the suffering that they endure, but I didn't necessarily feel it. And with all this time to sit and to process and to think and to feel, I felt it at this visceral level, deep in my gut. And what I felt was this: if we look at where our eggs and our milk and our meat come from, the vast majority come from mothers and babies. They're the ones who bear the brunt of harm for these products. They're the ones who suffer the most. If we take a chicken used in the chicken meat industry, she is selectively bred to grow so big, so fast that she can barely walk. She's in constant pain, and her legs might even collapse under her own body weight. She's crammed in this giant warehouse with thousands of other birds. And in this warehouse, there are these pipes with these spouts, these little spouts on them. And that's how she's supposed to be able to get water. But she's in so much pain, and her legs are so weak, and those pipes rise as she gets bigger. So she can't even reach the pipe to drink water. I mean, can you imagine that? That you're in so much pain, and your legs are so weak, you can't even have water to drink. That is her reality. And then, after all this struggle, She'll be picked up by a worker. She'll be thrown in a cage. That cage will be loaded on the back of a truck. That truck will go to the slaughterhouse. She'll be shipped there. She'll be dumped on a conveyor belt. She'll be picked up again. This time she'll be put in shackles that hang her by her legs, and she'll have her throat slit open. And when we talk about the age that she's killed, we don't talk about it in years. We don't talk about it in months. We don't even talk about it in weeks. We talk about it in days. The average chicken who's killed for meat in the United States, she is just 45 days old when she's killed. I think we all know that there's something severely wrong about the idea of baby animals fighting for their lives at slaughterhouses. Because they do. When they go to be killed, they fight for their lives with everything that they have. But they're just babies, and they're powerless, and they're scared. And this is absolutely heartbreaking to think about, of course. But animals are more than just creatures who feel pain or who we should feel sad for when they suffer. They're inquisitive. They want to learn. They want to interact with the world around them. It doesn't matter what the species is. They've got that in common. It could be a baby chicken or baby cow, baby pig. They want to play. They want to be around their mothers. But instead, they're systematically taken away from their mothers, and they're locked in these giant windowless sheds. Well, they'll never see the light of day. They'll never feel the grass on their feet, and they'll never feel the sunshine on their face. And I think we can do better. In fact, we know that. We recognize that. We know we can do better. We often hear about veal being cruel because it comes from baby calves. We hear about people who don't want to support the veal industry because of what it does to baby animals. But it goes beyond that. The average cow who's killed for our beef, for our steak, for our hamburger, he's only a year and a half old. Whereas in nature, he could live up to 20 years. Pigs, an average pig, when he's killed for pork, for sausages, for bacon, ham, he's only 6 months old. He's just a baby. And he, just like the vast majority of pigs killed for pork, came from a mother who was confined in what's known as a gestation crate. These metal bar cages, they are so small, they're barely larger than the mother pig's own body. She can't even turn around. She can only take one step forward and one step back. That is her life, day in and day out. It would be like if you or I were confined to an airline seat for our entire lives. That's what her life is. Confined, shoulder to shoulder, cage to cage, with another pig who also can't move. And you might be wondering, how did we get to this point? How did the pork industry evolve to treating mother pigs this way? Well, if we actually look to the pork industry itself, one of the pork industry's own management publications said, quote, "Forget the pig as an animal, treat him just like a machine in a factory." So you can see if some in the pork industry don't even view pigs as animals, why they would be able to confine them in these cages that are so small that they can't even turn around. But we know at our core that this is shameful. A lot of us know that pigs are also really intelligent. They can use tools. They can recognize themselves in mirrors. Researchers at Penn State actually taught pigs how to play video games. And you might be thinking, okay, how does a pig play a video game? Well, they actually maneuver the joystick with their mouth. But beyond that, pigs have friends. They experience joy. They get sad. Researchers also found that if there's a fight between two pigs, the other pigs will step in and they'll break it up. Not only that, but they can tell which pig started the fight, and they'll go to him and they'll calm him down. Pigs also make sounds to calm their babies down. A newborn piglet, he can recognize his mother's voice from birth, and he'll run to it when he hears it. For the other parents, caregivers out there, we sing to our babies. That's what pigs do. They make those soft little pig grunts. That is their version of what I would do to soothe my daughter. But instead, when a mother pig gives birth to her piglets, she's put in another cage where she's separated from her babies by thick metal bars. Can you imagine you're a mother and you just want to be around your child, and instead someone puts bars in between you and your babies? And then her piglets are taken away from her, and she's returned to that same cage, which is so small she can't even turn around. This is not the only instance where taking away babies from mothers is commonplace. In Newbury, Massachusetts, the police, they kept receiving calls because residents were hearing these weird sounds and they couldn't figure out where the sounds were coming from. So the police investigated, and what they found is that they were actually coming from a mother cow used for dairy who was crying because her baby had been taken away from her. Because cows, they're just like any other mammal, they only produce milk if they're impregnated and if they have a baby. In nature, their calves would nurse from them. They would bond with them. The mother cows would look after their babies as the babies explore the world around them. But instead, their calves are taken away from them almost immediately after birth, and they'll never see each other again. But our instinct, from the time that we are children, if we saw a mother and a baby together, doesn't matter what the species is, our instinct would be we'd likely smile. Our instinct wouldn't be that we want to rip them apart. If we went to an animal sanctuary as a child, and there was a pig who rolled over in front of us, wanted a belly rub, we would give him a belly rub. We wouldn't hurt him. If someone put a baby chick in our lap, our instinct would be to protect her, to pet her, not to harm her. And those instincts are still a part of us. Turns out that the system that treats animals this way, it's horrible, it's heartbreaking. But the good news is we can step away from it. We can do something about it. And we can do something about it every time we sit down to a meal. By incorporating more plant-based foods into our diet, we can make a big difference in the lives of animals. The more plants we eat, the more animals we can spare from suffering. Fewer baby chickens will be killed at just 45 days old. Fewer animals will be confined in cages so small they can't even turn around. And fewer mothers will be separated from their babies. I'm not saying we have to be perfect. None of us are, okay? And it's not all or nothing. But what I am saying is that taking animals systematically away from their families, locking them into cages where they're virtually immobilized, and denying them almost everything that is natural to them except for fear, that should at least give us pause. I grew up in Michigan, eating pretty much everything. I had a fairly typical family. My dad was in the auto industry, my mom was a teacher, and they were really great parents. They did a wonderful job raising my brother and me, but that's just kind of what we did, was we ate chicken and hamburgers and hot dogs, and I never gave it much thought. So when I found out what happens to some of these animals, I made the personal decision to start moving away from the way I had eaten growing up. And I remember feeling so guilty that my choices had contributed to this cruelty. But here's the thing I've learned as well, is that I don't think we should feel guilty. Instead, I think that we can feel empowered to take steps that reflect who we really are. We can take steps to eat in a way that reflect our better nature. I don't think we should, look at other people and judge them and point fingers at them. Instead, let's look at ourselves and ask, what can I do? And then, what can we do together? I've seen people in my life make changes. My mom is a vegetarian now, She eats cage-free eggs, and I'm so proud of her. It's about steps. One of my other friends doesn't eat chicken anymore. Another one of my friends, she gets soy milk in her morning coffee instead of dairy. It's about doing what we can. I don't like anyone telling me what to do, and I'm sure that you don't either. So it's not about any one of us telling anyone else what to do. It's about returning to ourselves. It's about returning to that kid in us who would pet a pig, not hurt him. It's about getting reacquainted with that child in us who would protect a baby chick, not hurt her, and then making choices that reflect that. So the issue isn't whether we've taken the final step. It's what we can do as a first step together. And I believe that we can all do something. Thank you.